I think if you were to ask me 20 years ago, I would never thought of serving full-time in ministry. After graduating from university in Canada with a business degree, I thought my vision for my life was to make lots of money, to marry a rich husband, and to live in a mansion. And God was never in an equation in my life, even though I was a Christian. I think not until God brought us to China almost 10 years ago that God's vision has taken over my vision for my life. The transformation began when we first went to China for our very first mission trip. But to be honest, I wasn't very keen when Jacob asked me to go to mission trip to China. I was a lukewarm Christian and I seldom shared the gospel with anyone, so I was not very interested in mission trip. Plus, I heard so many stories about China and how dirty it was, that place, and I didn't want to go there. But as I was struggling, I think God was asking me this question: how is it that you're going there for 2 weeks compared to what I've done for you on the cross? And also I was thinking, oh my goodness, if I go to heaven now, I don't know how to answer to Jesus. I never share the gospel with anyone. So in my mind, I was just thinking, okay, I'll do this checklist. At least when I go to heaven, I can tell Jesus I've done my Great Commission. But little did we know when we went to this place called Hangyang, which is a little bit farther away from Chengsha. This place was poor and there was an orphanage there. It's a disabled orphanage and no one knows about it. And this place were like a zoo. It was so dirty when we first got there. We were so shocked seeing all these disabled children there. They were like prisoners behind all these bars, and when you play with the children, they have no emotions on their face and they smell like animals and they treat it like animals. And we were shocked, and honestly, I never see children in such poverty and in such poor conditions, and many of them have to left to die if the orphanage is past the quota. They have to live in a room called dying room to leave to die because the orphanage not having enough resources there. And to be honest, when we see all these beautiful children, they're beautiful children in God's eyes, and how could that happen to them? And I felt all of a sudden, why am I so blessed I could be educated in such a beautiful country and I loved by my parents, where they have to stuck in this place. And I think that being there that 2 weeks, God really spoke to me, the idols in my life, and how blessed it is to, and how joyful it is to be able to help people that are in great needs. And I think returning from that trip, God really showed us turning our desire from the things on earth to the things above. I still remember after God called us into full-time ministry, Jacob was more ready than I did. So he really wanted to be a mission aviator, basically a pilot, a missionary pilot. So we went to a place in Canada called Calgary. There's a seminary there called Perry Bible College. And I still remember walking into this place. I saw a bunch of pictures on the wall, and I see a lot of primitive people wearing just the underwear with their, with the sticks. And when I walked in that place, I really honestly talked to myself in my head. I was like, oh my goodness, this is not what I imagined, and I hope God is not calling us to do all these things, because I'm very much a city girl. So I thought to myself, there's no way I could do this. I remember coming home to our place in Vancouver. At that time, I was very obsessed with my house, and I actually prayed to God. I said, God, I'd rather die than going to this place. Unless you change my heart, you have to do a miracle in my heart for me to say yes to you to be in full-time ministry. And God is so funny. He has a great sense of humor. And what he did was basically he brought us to Israel. So finally we were in Israel the very first time, and I still remember we went to this place called Jordan River baptismal place, where people want to be here because they wanted to be like Jesus, and they believe the water is holy there. So people from all over the world, they would come here to be baptized. And I still remember one incident when I was standing back and watching these people coming down to the river. There was a small voice talking to me. The small voice was inviting me, do you want to be part of my team to fulfill the Great Commission? And there was one song came to my mind was, one day every tongue will confess you are God. One day every knee will bow. And my heart was so touched, and I answered to this small voice. I said, yes, I want to be part of this team to make all nations come together to worship you and to fulfill the Great Commission. So because of that experience, we start exploring seminaries. Where should we go? How we should proceed of answering God's call. But it actually took us another few more years to argue with God. I remember we were at that time we're very active at church. We run alpha courses, we run a lot of outreach courses, and thinking, okay, maybe we just do more outreach could satisfy that full-time ministry needs, in our heart. We don't have to be so serious, just serve more at the church should be okay. But I guess God didn't let us go. He just kept, putting that peace, the emptiness in our heart. And we were doing so well in our career, we're doing so well in business. We thought, it will go away eventually. But that emptiness would never go away, even though everything were going so well. Finally, we say yes, and we went to Dallas the very first time to check out the school there, because some of our very admired preachers were actually from the school, and we were always amazed why they are so powerful in terms of preaching God's word. They're so solid in a biblical sense. So we went to Dallas the very first time. And I still remember first year when we went there together as a couple, and then we just started study together. And people would say to us, people would come as a couple and we would leave as a family. At that time, I'd been married for almost 10 years, and we didn't have any children. And I felt that, it won't be the place for us to have children, because we tried and no children. Even finished our first semester, I got pregnant with a baby, and to be honest with you, at that very moment when I find out I was pregnant, I was not very excited. I was actually very confused, because I felt, wow, I just started my semester and now I'm pregnant, which means my dream is gone. So I was my feeling was very mixed, but little did I know God knew I needed this detour in my life to give me a new visions for His kingdom. Situation has changed. I was no longer a full-time student, and my husband has become a student where I had to stay home. I became a seminary wife, and that was a huge adjustment in my life. But that's also the very first time in my life that I got to understand the desperation, or sometimes the loneliness, and how unappreciated all these seminary wives were, because I was one of them, and I felt the same feeling lonely, feeling trapped, feeling not appreciated. And because of that journey of being a seminary wife, God gave me a new visions for His kingdom. So when my son was almost 20 months old, one time I had my personal retreat. I sensed God was calling me to go back to finish my study at the seminary. Even though I thought that was impossible at that time, I felt like after I gave birth to my son, all my memory was gone. My brain was only half left. And I thought that was impossible for me to go back to seminary to study, because I knew how hard it was, because I was also a full-time student. And I thought to myself, how could it be possible? I'll be a full-time mom, full-time wife, and full-time student. And I remember I was debating with God. I was like, I cannot do this. This is impossible for me. But God was, using Moses to encourage me. As if, Moses making all the excuses, trying to stay away from God's calling in his life. And I, in the same way, I use the same excuses, telling God, I can't do this. And I remember one comforting verse from that passage that came to my mind was, I'll be with you. I'll be with you. And to be honest, the whole journey of going back to seminary, study full-time, being a full-time mom, being a full-time wife, being a full-time student was not easy. But you know what? God fulfilled his promise. When I look back, I didn't even know how I graduated with my degree and, still be able to survive. And I remember all those little moments that I felt I couldn't do it anymore. And God was faithful. He was with me. So both of us graduated from 2013, Jacob and I still remember after we graduated from DTS, Dallas Theological Seminary, we thought to ourselves, what's the next step? We have no idea where God was taking us. Although there were a couple of different opportunities in US and in Canada, but we felt our heart was not right. So strangely, Dr. Keith, out in the blue, we had no idea who Dr. Keith was, and then one day we just received an email from this person called Dr. Keith and emailed Jacob, and Jacob thought that was a spam mail, so he was kind of ignoring it. But this Dr. Keith kept writing to us through many emails and just kept writing to us and even asked to call us. So we thought, out of being polite, we should entertain this Dr. Keith. But little did we know, God knew that this is something we needed to in touch with Dr. Keith for our next journey in our life. So it was very funny conversation going on. So Dr. Keith would call us when we were in Canada, ask us how we were doing. And at that time, I just gave birth to Josiah and Jeanette. And Dr. Keith were so kind enough to send me baby blankets, hand-knit baby blankets. So we felt very drawn to this couple. Why are they so kind to us? And I still remember, because out of that relationship, we really want to say, okay, a visit to Singapore, just to be polite, So we thought, okay, next time when we drop by Hong Kong, we will see my family there. We will just drop by in Singapore just to say hi. So about 7 years ago, about 2013 or 2012, we came to visit Singapore the very first time. And I still remember coming to East, where we used to be at the Dorset Road, and we spent 2 days actually visiting different faculties and students, and just to pray over this place, where this is something Jacob and I would stay, or a journey on as a ministry for us. But one thing that I think God really confirmed our vision, his vision for us to stay at East, was I remember the chapel that we attended. And that day it was one of our sisters sharing. She's from Vietnam. I remember her name was Esther, and she was sharing how her journey at East. And guess what? When we were sitting at that chapel, guess what song they were using at that time? One day every tongue will confess you are God. One day every knee will bow. The same song that I heard years ago at 2007, where we were in Israel. The same song came back to my ear again. And to be honest, at that moment, I knew God was calling us to be at East, and his vision for us to be at East. I looked around the room. Look at all these people from 15 different nations. This is part of God's Great Commission. And at that moment, I was very touched in the heart. And I told Jacob afterwards, I think this is the place we're supposed to be. The past
5 years have been an amazing journey. I can't even believe we're going to our 6 years of staying in Singapore and serving at East. I think to me, serving at East, it made me realize what my design, like all the experience in my life and all the gifts and all the challenges that I experienced previously in different places in my life can come finally into a one big picture. And there's a moment that I felt, wow, now I knew why I had to go through all this, even learning English, right? I empathize with you because when I first moved to Canada, I had to learn how to use English as well because living in Hong Kong for 20 years. So this is something that, God never let anything wasted. Also my time in a seminary, being a seminary wife, that God gave me a passion to go back to study for women ministry, and how I'm grateful for the ministry that we have at East, the partner in ministry, just the whole school philosophy and the leadership of embracing this wonderful ministry to equip seminary wives to serve alongside with their husband. This is something that I'm personally, passionate about. So through the journey, I just started to see, God visions has taken over our visions, but his vision is always more beautiful, more fulfilling, and more abundance. And I'm so grateful that we slowly, even we argue with God, we slowly follow his vision, because his visions, only through his vision can bring us true abundance in life. I want to encourage you, if you're wondering what's next for you, it's so easy for us to caught up with the challenges, and sometimes we forgot God's visions in our lives. But there are moments God will be quiet, but don't give up, because God will always bring you something more magnificent, more abundance than what we expect.